Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you're going to meet a wildly successful entrepreneur and business coach. She's also the host of a very popular podcast called Choice Wisdom. We're going to share her journey just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, there's that old saying, it's lonely at the top. And as a owner of a PR firm and podcast network, I can tell you that there are only a handful of people that I can tell my deepest, darkest secrets to. And so it is lonely at the top for many entrepreneurs and CEOs. And that's why they bring in somebody like my next guest. Gayle Goodman Lynch is in the studio. She's a business life coach and host of a very popular podcast called the Choice Wisdom Podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. This is so much fun to be on someone else's show.
Thank you. Likewise. Yes, and you have a very popular show. We'll talk about that in a minute. Tell us your journey. How did you get into this?
You know, it's interesting. I actually had worked in corporate America for a long time, like so many people do, and my job sort of naturally came to an end. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was being called to do something different with my life. And so many people run into that problem. And they kind of freak out a little bit and don't know what to do. And mine happened during the Great Recession. I lost my in-house job and thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? So I wound up basically starting a business. I thought, no one is going to hire anyone at the vice president level in marketing during this, economic downturn. So maybe I should go out and try to make my own reign. So that's what I did. And I started out, just as a marketing consultant in 2008. And I got my first client within 2 weeks, and I stayed busy ever since. So I have worked mainly as a corporate communications fractional CMO, CE, or Chief Communications Officer, fractional. There you go. I don't even know what I do, Jeff. It is a mouthful, but it was fractional. And I think what was successful about that, especially during the Great Recession, is that no one could hire anyone full time. So they're able to get, that senior level load for a fraction of the cost, fraction of the time. And I was able to enjoy a lot more freedom in my life, which then I realized I love. So that was how I started my entrepreneurial journey.
I love that. We're going to pull up your website, and as we scroll down the website, why don't you describe your perfect client? Who do you like to work with?
The person I really love to work with is actually myself to a degree right now, because I started a business with my husband about 2 years ago, and it's reaching that teenage stage. And if you run a business, you're going to know what I'm talking about. But when you've gotten past figuring out how to run the business and all the pitfalls and just, unusual stuff you weren't expecting, then it starts to really grow and it really starts to take off. And when it does that, what happens is that it takes you along with it, right? And it takes you over. And a lot of times you realize, oh my gosh, this business is now running my life and I'm not running it anymore. It's running me. And a lot of times when that happens too, you start bringing in more staff and you start bringing in more vendors and you've got more people you're communicating with. So using my communications background, what I try to do is help my clients, figure out how do you communicate with your external audiences and your internal audiences in a way that everyone's aligned and they know what they're doing. So that's the practical side of how I work with people. But then there's an internal subject that comes up, right? Because if you're the founder running a company, then you actually are very much a reflection of your company, or your company's a reflection of you. So it really is important how well you're doing. And a lot of times when people start to experience a lot of that stress, a lot of the things that don't work so well for us personally start coming up.
Okay, you were telling me a story right before the show about one of your favorite success stories.
Oh, I had this really great client. He was the CEO of a company that had been wildly successful when he started it. He's one of those people that because of his you talked about energy before this show started, right? It's like some people have energy and they attract all the good to them. This was that type of a person. And he created a great company. And it was with a fairly small number of people that he pretty much knew, he had personal relationships with. And then as it started to grow, he realized that, the business does get to that teenage stage. It gets to a larger point that for him, he needed to start acting more like a CEO rather than a contributor in the business and someone who was kind of on the ground, boots on the ground kind of thing. So as the business grew, it evolved into another couple of brands. So over a couple of year period, we were communicating with all kinds of new audiences, a whole ton of people that he was hiring, and helping, align that external message with the internal message, like I was talking about, plus helping him figure out who am I going to be at the head of this thing.
Right.
Because his demeanor, his personality didn't have to change because he was a wonderful person. He was already just an amazing soul running this company, but his behavior had to change because everybody would follow what he did. So he was starting to get a little bit more, I don't want to say critical. That's probably not the right word, but more aware of how he shows up in a room is going to inform how everybody else has to show up in the room. And I think that's daunting sometimes when you're the leader because you're not used to all eyes being on you. It's like the camera being on you all the time. And you just basically have to kind of get comfortable with that. And it's a transition.
Companies grow and change. Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak started Apple Computing. 50 years ago, and they were both kind of computer nerds. But they didn't know how to manage teams and lead teams, and I'm sure at some point they probably had to turn to somebody like you and say, hey, I didn't sign up to manage all these people. Like, how do I do this?
Right, and how do I manage myself in managing all these people? Because you don't realize what people pick up on. So you're a parent, right?
Yes.
Your kids actually work here.
Yeah.
So you realize exactly how much people reflect who you are in your children. Because all of a sudden your kid will go do something that irritates you. And then if you think about it, it's your habit that they're showing, honestly, in a business, the same thing happens. It's not that your employees are your children, but they model their behavior on you.
Yes.
So your self-regulation becomes way more important. And if you're the kind of person who gets easily stressed and starts sweating or, and that's not this client I'm talking about, but I've had other clients, it's like they get stressed and they get snarky or they get snippy or they make bad decisions. When you start to work on that situation, your employees they blossom underneath you because they're not terrified anymore. They're not like, okay, which boss is showing up today?
Right.
And it's not that you're a bad person. You're just having trouble regulating your own stress.
Yeah. So important. I want to transition to your podcast. So Choice Wisdom, let's go ahead and pull up her podcast page. I love the name, and you have a co-host. Tell us about the history and the kinds of people you like to profile.
So Choice Wisdom actually came out of my own coaching journey. So I had a life coach who worked with me, and she kept reminding me that there is a part of my soul that loves to communicate, obviously, because I do that for a living. But what she was really encouraging me to think about is that I love to help other people tell their stories. And one of the things I believe I am here for is to help people understand and remember who they truly are at a soul level. And that's why I started Choice Wisdom. And it was just, I literally got Zoom, I got a microphone, I started asking people I knew to be on the podcast. In fact, my coach was one of the first ones. And I just started recording. And I found that I loved it. I'd come out of radio early in my career, and I worked in broadcast journalism as well. So I was very comfortable with doing this type of thing, but I had never done it for myself. And it was a little scary, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I loved it. I interviewed 17 people the first year. I had kind of a news magazine format, sort of like This American Life. And then the second season, I called it Level Up. I did more one-on-one interviews. And then this year, I'm really excited because Louisa Garrett, who is the kindness guru and the founder of the Make Kind Loud movement, has joined me as co-host. So she and I will do interviews with ourselves, just the two of us talking about a subject. And then we've also done some amazing interviews, and I just can't wait to publish all of them this year because they're just great stories. But it's all about creating the life that you want. What choices do you make? That's why it's called choice wisdom. The choices people make that create the life that they want and how that comes about.
Well, I encourage all my viewers to follow her on all her social media because she gives away the gold for free. She has all these wonderful tips. Let's go ahead and play one.
He has a system that helps people, kind of get out of their own way and simplify their business and install systems and processes that get you out of doing the day-to-day. Because what I do find, and I found this myself, I find this with other people that I coach, is that when you start a business, eventually it takes you over and it sneaks up on you in the middle of the night and takes over everything. And all of a sudden you do nothing but work. And you think, wow, my business is supposed to be serving my life and not me doing all, giving my life to the business, right? So I do help people sort of like zoom out and remember, why is it you got in business to begin with and where are you trying to go with life? When people show up at your memorial service 50 years from now, what do you want them to say? And they can't say anything about you if you didn't actually live a life all that time. So no one ever wants to talk about the guy who worked all the time, right?
So brilliant.
No one wants to talk about the guy who worked all the time.
Well, we should all, there's a lot of business and life coaches who've never run a business, but you've been in the trenches. So share that part of the journey.
Yeah, so I started that first venture during the Great Recession, and never looked back, honestly, because it was so freeing to own my own business. And I am now a self-described entrepreneurial evangelist because I think everybody should run a business. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to do that, but I'm a big believer in owning your own business. And I really love working with other people who are growing businesses because I see myself in them too, which is just joyful because it's like, I say, oh, I remember when my business was that small and it was, going these places. And interestingly enough, my husband decided to leave his corporate career a couple of years ago, and we bought a sign company. So of all random things, we are now in the sign business together, but we are a husband-wife team running a company called It's a Good Sign, and I can't take credit for the name. That was my husband that did it. Yeah. But yeah, so it's fun and it's exciting and it's new, so I get excited about the new. I think he might be a little less so, but back to this whole self-regulation thing though, if I hadn't gone on this journey, so I'd been on a personal journey for the last 10 years, really doubling down on my own, personal self-regulation, for the lack of a better term. And it's because I had we all have trauma, we all have drama. And I had to start letting a lot of those things go. Mm-hmm. And I had to use the F word a lot, which is forgiveness, and learning how to forgive the things in my life that were hard. And through that journey, I've realized that if you can get to a point where you're better with you and your own self-love is strong enough, then you can achieve anything. Even running a business with your husband, who is, I hand to God, if you built him from the ground up, he couldn't be no more different from me than he is. So we're like completely different people. But yet we work well together because what we realized is that when we have a common goal, we can achieve anything. And he brings his gifts, I bring my gifts, and we both value each other's gifts. But that's not always easy to do in a marriage because there's all the stuff, right? There's all the drama.
Wow. I'm so impressed with you. We could talk forever. We've got about a minute left, so why don't you look into the camera on the left and talk to the viewer who might need to bring you in.
Yeah, so I run the sign company quite a bit with my husband, but in my free time, quote unquote, I do love working with other entrepreneurs who are at that 2 to 3 years stage of business who are really looking to level up. I'm a big picture thinker, and I like to encourage other people to do the same. So I call myself a coach, but I also call myself an advisor as well, because a lot of people go, I don't know what a coach is, right? Coaching really is someone coming alongside you to help pull out of you a lot of what you know and help you organize it and put the puzzle pieces together so that you can be more successful. I have my own coaches, and I would not give them up because they help me level up all the time, and it's more of just a level of accountability. So.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your wisdom with us. We're going to end with her website, which is CoEqualNetwork.com. The great Gayle Goodman Lynch. Thanks for coming on the show.
Appreciate it.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.